Okay, welcome back. We're going to do Jazz Compilations number 3.
Well, the last one you did had a lot of surprises to it. I was very impressed with what you had in the shoot there. Ooh,
Well, that's great,
that
but
was burning hot.
I pretty much took the stack right out of my collection.
Did you?
Yeah, I didn't mix them up
Boy, I
a
tell
certain
you,
way or
those
anything.
were hot records.
Yeah, all right.
Very good selections. But you are a musician, so you don't exactly go far afield in your choice of music. So
Well,
it's really very good selections.
well, I think I also get lucky sometimes. There's something to be said for just getting lucky. I mean, it is smart to check the record label, things like that, when you're looking for records. But some of it's just pure luck. You just go, okay, well, Charlie Parker record sampler. Hmm. I like the cover. They got these drinks at the bottom, right? Where they have the names of the tunes, but it's a fun way to show them, and so that kind of caught my eye. Also, it's kind of it looks like a '50s kind of a cover to me,
Oh,
and
definitely.
and
It gets to be a '50s cover when you look at it and you go, what did they have in mind there? Why don't you just give me a picture of Charlie Parker
mm-hmm.
and his group playing? What's all this champagne glasses? What's a connection?
Yeah, usually it's a pretty girl,
I
right?
mean, come on, let's do something here that makes some sense.
Uh-huh. So you got Lost and The Lonely. I'm trying to where it doesn't say who's performing on that one.
Hmm.
That's interesting. And then they have Jerry Winter. So Jerry Winter did the first two tracks on this album, the compilation, Charlie Parker Records, and then going to Cozy Cole and Duke Jordan, Les Liaisons Dangereuses, and from Monday on, Mundell Lowe on guitar, My Old Flame with Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, Max Roach. So I got Rhythm, Joe Carroll, Grant Green.
Wow, these are some great lineups. This
Two.
sounds like maybe 1950, 1951, too, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm. It Ain't Necessarily So, Slide Hampton Orchestra, Moon River, Mancini Mercer.
You have no dates on these recordings?
It doesn't. I would have to really study the liner notes, and I don't see anything obviously on it. But it might have been, a little later. Because when you say Moon River, that seems like it's got to be in 1960, right?
Yeah, it can't be with that lineup. These lineups, though Slide Hampton throws me. I never knew that beyond the early '50s that Miles Davis showed up on anybody's albums but his own.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to remember that Miles Davis came out of the late
well,
40s.
It's a sampler, so it could be taken from different
eras.
Epochs. Yeah, eras. Yeah. And it says East and West of Jazz. So, a mixture, but all fine jazz performances. So, another fun one to have found. And the next one we have The Big Reunion. Fletcher Henderson All-Stars in Hi-Fi under the direction of Rex Stewart. This is one I remember listening to and being really pleasantly surprised. Because I've never saw it before at the time. And it had some really good performers on it. Rex Stewart, Emmett Berry, Taj Jordan, and Joe Thomas on trumpets. Trombones, Higginbotham, Benny Morton, and Dickie Wells. Saxes, Garvin Bushell, Hilton Jefferson. Altos, Coleman Hawkins and Ben Webster. Tenors, Hayward Henry, baritone. Clarinet, Buster Bailey. Piano, Red Richards. Guitar, Al Casey. Bass, Bill Pemberton. Drums, Jimmy Crawford. but I just remember listening to it and just going, yeah, I like this. Sugarfoot Stomp, Honeysuckle Rose, Round About Midnight, Casey Stew, Wrapping It Up, Three Thieves, The Way She Walks, King Porter Stomp. So, and I just like how they're set up. You see them in the studio, and they're um, facing each other with their charts out, and um, it, and they look pretty relaxed setting, right? One guy's jacket is hanging on the back of this little board, and you see the mics. Uh, for those days, to see a number of mics rather than just one mic in the middle of the room. There's a there's a few mics going on there, so it capture all the different sounds. You got any thoughts on this one?
Well, it's actually showing you the transition from the big bands. Dixieland moved to big band, and what you have here is a little mixture. Fletcher Henderson.
Sorry, I ran out of a little space there, so I had to make a little break here, but we're trying to patch this together. So we were talking about this record, The Big Reunion, and Dizzy was talking about the Dixieland and Fletcher Henderson and how they were.
He was at one time was the biggest traveling band, and that if you were going to have a big band concert and dancing during this period was very big. Ballrooms, huge ballrooms,
Right.
and that would be the biggest show in town. It didn't matter if you were in New York or maybe even a small town in Nebraska, Iowa.
They're coming from the
They
big
went
ballroom,
even
right?
down in the South. Fletcher Henderson sold a lot of records. You have to remember 78's. When I see an old store and they're recreating how people bought records originally, you would look at lists. You wouldn't look at records. All the records were in files.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd say, well, off the top 100 records here, I want this one, I want that one. And then the operator of the store would go behind the shelves there and he'd pull one out, and there's no record jacket cover pictures or anything. It's just in a brown sleeve and would say the manufacturer of the record, RCA or MGM or whatever. And Fletcher Henderson was selling a lot of records. And out of those bands, I believe, came the likes of John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Stan Getz. So many big names came out of the big band era, and those bands, those members made the transition, and this is a transition
Hard bop or whatever.
Well, no, they just called it jazz.
Mm-hmm.
That's before the genre started to break out.
Mm-hmm.
It was just called jazz, and because you see, big band was big band. And
Yeah.
big band, they didn't really want to get a label of either Dixieland or jazz. They wanted it to be dance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Get the kids out there.
Right.
Swinging. Swaying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those were exciting times. I mean, those people would go to those shows and they get so excited. I remember that Benny Goodman started in New York, and he thought maybe his band would disband. And his last stop was going to be, I believe, like something like the Rose Ballroom in like Pasadena, California.
Mm-hmm.
And he traveled all across the country, and absolutely low turnout, and the people that turned out weren't excited about the music. He made his last concert date in California, and the crowd went wild. Wild. And the record labels all saw that, and they all made a beeline to get him on record. And that was the start of it. That was the start of the big bands, and that's why Benny Goodman's name today is revered and is such a big deal. It's because he kind of fostered jazz in the sense that all these musicians got their chops down.
Yeah.
With
had some
bands like Fletcher Henderson,
Mm-hmm.
who competed with Benny Goodman. Actually, he's Fletcher Henderson predates Benny Goodman, and Louis Armstrong had a band out then.
But you had a big name to kind of sell it, and I
Right.
think like Tommy Dorsey, I think it took a little time for a lot of those guys. I mean, I've seen some of those Glenn Miller Story and the I can't remember what the other one was called, Benny Goodman Story, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it takes a little bit of wood.
Well, we have to thank those bands because they're the we're
Impetus.
kind of the school.
Yeah,
that-
exactly.
and-
You're getting
and-
better on the road, right?
Right, and we have to remember that a lot of these musicians maybe didn't even graduate from high school. Miles Davis went on to Juilliard, but most of them were taught at a very early age in elementary, junior high bands, and then before they could even get out of high school, they were out there playing professionally. And you could, as you know, as a member of a band, you get it all down before you want to be a soloist. And once you're ready to be leader of a band, you better have it all down. You better be ready.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
these guys came out and they were ready.
Right. I
But
remember
that's thanks to those big bands.
I remember talking to Ernie Watts a little bit, and a sax player, and he, he started where he filled in for somebody one time and got to play with Count Basie's band, and that was a bit of notoriety for him and a chance to grow and go, hey, this is the way to do it.
Cannonball Adderley, father was a music teacher, wanted his sons to be, Nat and Cannonball, to be music teachers too. They went to New York City. While they were studying, Oscar Pettiford was playing in a club. Cannonball went down with his horn and asked, "Can I play on one tune?" Oscar Pettiford says, "What's the harm in this kid playing with the band? It's not a weekend night, this and that."
Not like a haircut.
He heard Cannonball Adderley, and he says, "Not only can you play on this, I'm putting you in my band." And so that's how those things, and that story can be repeated over and over and over, where someone thought, well, I don't know what direction I'm going to go in life. I did this in high school. I did this in
College
kind of
or something.
local community bands or this or that, and I maybe a music teacher or whatever, and they get a break, and boom, they're recognized.
Right. Okay, here's a little later one. This is Blue Note live at the Roxy. And we have Alfonso Monzon. We have Carmen McRae. We have Ronnie Laws. We have Earl Klug and Donald Byrd. And Blue Note All-Stars, which I don't know who that group would be, but what do you know about Blue Note and maybe some of these artists? Go ahead, Dizzy. Lay it on us.
Do we have Freddie Hubbard here?
Donald Byrd.
Well, Donald Byrd is a big name, and his early recordings on Blue Note go for tremendous amounts of money and are historic records. But he had a long career, and the later albums he got into more pop, to me, jazz and soul than he was pure jazz. I think of Freddie Hubbard as the biggest name that I knew on CTI. Paul Desmond, I don't see him on this record here. Hubert Laws was on CTI. Milt Jackson was on CTI. Have I come across any of these people? Ron Carter was on CTI.
No, Earl Klug, Carmen McRae. So you said this was CTI? I don't know where you saw that. It says Blue Note Live.
Oh, Blue Note.
Blue Note Live. So you got a little off the mark here. But
these are not big.
1976. This is recorded.
Well, this is again
76.
getting later, and as I said, I started in the late '70s losing interest because we were going more pop or avant-garde than we were really true jazz or hard bop or bop.
Well,
I'm sorry I missed up on
that's
a
okay.
name of
That's all right. Blue Note
Blue
All
Note.
Stars are Jerry Peters, conductor, Gene Harris, John Lee, Jerry Brown, Bobby Hutchinson, Earl Klug, Leon Chandler, Chuck Finley, George Bohannon, Fred Jackson, Gary Herbig.
As deep as I go into jazz, most of those names I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to a lot of people out there, if you know them, bless you. Good, great. That doesn't ring a bell, except for a few names that you
Carmen
mentioned.
McRae, you've heard of, yeah.
Yeah. And again, Carmen McRae, for a lot of people, because that was a very distinctive way she phrased things and all. She kind of was like, to me, she did a monk record where she tried to do monk compositions and put lyrics to them and all. And to some people, that's really great. But she was an acquired taste. She's like fine wine.
I like that wine.
Yeah.
I would have a sip of that anytime. So I'm sure I like this record. I don't remember playing it like a whole bunch, but it looks like one I would enjoy.
Well, we knew the Roxy couldn't have been a jazz club. I mean, I just never heard of it before. I've heard it at the Roxy as a rock and roll place. There's a Roxy, but as a jazz club, I don't know.
So here we have another compilation, a jazz holiday. Benny Goodman and his boys, Benny Goodman clarinet solos, Red Nichols and his Five Pennies, Joe Venuti, Ed Lang.
Oh, this is again going
Adrian
back.
Rollini.
Going back
early.
You're in the late 40s. You're in the early 50s, but really the 40s. This is all 40s music. Red Nichols is surely.
One of it says 1934.
Yeah.
So another one from 31, another one from 30, and one from 29. Red Nichols from 29. But we've talked before about Joe Venuti and how I big fan of Joe Venuti's music.
He must have lived a long life because
he did.
I've got so many Joe Venuti records.
Oh yeah, me too. I got a bunch of them.
And almost all of them. He looks like he's an older fellow anyway.
Right.
So he's back there in the 30s and 40s. But wow,
yeah,
a lot of these people had very long lives. It wasn't. The big band era was not a lot of people that were on drugs, dope, and alcoholics and all that. These were serious musicians,
Yeah.
and they were led by band leaders that if you didn't show up or if you weren't capable of playing the charts and doing your job, you were out of the band. That was it. There wasn't any second chances or anything else. If you can't do it, we got plenty of people can. You're out of here.
But
we won't even miss you.
I went to Jazz Alley. Maybe it was 15 years ago, but I got to see Sweets Edison and Al Gray. And they were old, but hey, they still wanted to do their thing, and they did their thing, and they were guys that had been doing their thing for years.
Harry Sweets Edison, for the people who worked with him, other jazz musicians, don't take me into account, all swear by the man. They thought that you couldn't do any better. You just couldn't. And so if he's on if I see that name on a record jacket, I'm going, that's like seeing Red Garland. I go, or Milt Hinton.
Yeah.
That's like a clue.
Right.
This is a good record.
This could be a good record. You never know for sure, but at least you got a good. Like you say, sometimes they have just one mic or something.
Well,
you never
Red
know.
Garland wouldn't do a record unless he had his sidemen with him. You get his trio, or you don't get Red Garland.
Interesting.
So, just see Red Garland, you go, okay, I know who he packs with him.
Yep.
No way am I going to pass on this record.
Oh, cool. Well, here, this is Mainstream Records. We talked about Mainstream a little bit. I think this was the one you were talking about.
Well, it's an underfinanced small label, I believe, out of Southern California. I'm taking a guess on that because Big Brother and the holding company's first record was on Mainstream. Okay, and I have seen, and I have in my collection, some jazz records. And I think a lot of jazz records that show up, musicians that show up on this, was at the time, we're talking about the early 50s.
Well, this is a 1945 recording here.
Okay, and even 1945, what it was is some record companies did put people under contract. But even if somebody was under contract, they could go out and if a record label wanted to pay them for one session, they would do an album. Okay,
Well,
and they would have no residual rights. There's nothing more than to be playing on a date, and the record label can pick the titles of the album, write the notes, and you have no control over it. It's a payday, And
Well,
these guys.
this sounds like a reissue kind of situation because I'm looking here at the bottom. And it says Commodore Jazz Classics. And it says about this recording, these are the original Commodore performances that made Commodore the leading independent and mostly widely respected jazz label, which I know Billy Crystal's dad, I think, was involved in that.
Might
label.
be a 78's label,
Right.
Commodore.
Right.
And so it was, like I was saying earlier on some videos, is that's when people bought a record. They got an A side and a B side, and there was no photo on the album or anything,
Right.
and you didn't leaf through anything. You just read a list of records that were available in the store, and you would point out which one you want, and you would go pull it.
Okay. This is a town hall concert, but it's got Body and Soul Limehouse Blues by Gene Krupa and Charlie Ventura and George Walters.
Well, we may be back in the 30s and 40s again.
Well, I said a 1945 concert.
Oh,
so-
1945. So it's
Yeah.
the 40s, yeah. You can always, when you hear those names, be at least assured that they were performing in the 40s.
Yeah. Teddy Wilson, Specs Pal on drums. Another one, Teddy Wilson. Another one that has Stuff Smith, Billy Taylor, Ted Sturgis. And then they have a 7 comes 11, which has a pretty big group. Red Norvo, Teddy Wilson, Flip Phillips, Eddie Burt, Shorty Rogers, Aaron Sachs, Remo Palmieri, Slam Stewart, and Specs Pal.
You're better at this than I am, but you know that out of this big band era from the 30s and 40s came a wealth of jazz standards, we'll call them, and titles that even up until this very moment are still being re-recorded.
Sure.
Maybe with a different arrangement and all, but it's still
The American Songbook.
it is, and these titles, since there's so many thousands of them, and you got all the arrangements are available. I mean, what the trumpets are supposed to be playing, what the bass is doing, and the whole orchestra. And so if you want to just make it into a trio, you know what the bass, drums, and the horn should do, and you can explore it. But it gave us a body of music that we'll treasure for generations to come.
Yeah, I'm looking at the one song. I don't stand a ghost.
I
of a
can
chance.
tell you from all the books that I've read on jazz, when you read this era of music, it's fascinating. It's just fascinating, because that's when arrangers that were not members of the band.
Well, sometimes they were. I'm thinking of the Webster Blatton.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but
what-
a lot of those,
that?
a lot of those people that came out of those and a lot of them were so sought after that they'd be stolen. Somebody would offer them more money, and
Right.
they'd switch bands.
Now, Billy Strayhorn, he was not a member of the band. He was just a guy.
He made one recording, but no, yeah, and that's a good. There you got it. There you go. Duke Ellington getting 99.9% of the credit, where Billy Strayhorn, who was introverted and kind of had to, because of his homosexuality and all, wanted to be out of sight and out of mind and everything. And so Billy Strayhorn wrote so many of the Duke Ellington classics.
Right.
So the arranger became very important. Very important.
Certainly. Okay, so for our final record, we have another Dixieland and New Orleans Jazz. Original Dixieland, One Step, High Society, Royal Garden Blues. Just seemed like a basic original jazz Dixieland
I hope
band.
we have some viewers that are down in New Orleans and can go see the World's Greatest Jazz Band on Bourbon Street, and bands similar to that. And a lot of these bands, when you go to see their shows, are selling LPs. And I've, over the years, collected a lot of those. And they are just terrific, you know. But it's a niche. It's a...
There's people that really dig Dixieland.
And I'm one of them. I'm one of them. And you know, I'll have people come over and I'll be playing it. And again, I'll have that old time thing going. They'll go, this isn't your record, is it? And I go, yeah, I love this. And they go, okay. So
please get it off my counter again. And this one's 20s, 30s, and 40s as far as recordings. But if you like Dixieland,
that's what the world was listening to then. Though.
That's right.
That's what the world was listening to, and they couldn't get enough of this. They could not get enough of this.
Yeah, Jelly Roll Morton, Sidney Bechet.
All those are famous names. Names.
King Oliver. King Oliver, wasn't that the one that Louis Armstrong was playing with? Do you happen to remember?
Yeah, I think he was.
Okay.
I think one of his first bands that he played was with King Oliver.
Yep, that's what I have. So that's
an
it.
An interesting thing is that Louis Armstrong, one of his first jobs was to work on riverboats, paddle wheelers. And he was
cruise ships,
the cruise ships of the day, and he would play on the bands that were popular at that time, that were on they were basically stayed year round playing just on riverboats, and that was his form of income. And he was in a reformatory. His mother couldn't bring him up. And so he was in a reformatory. He went from the reformatory to working on the riverboats with
King Oliver and others.
Yeah, right.
Sounds great. So that I felt like that was a lengthy one, but
we had a little interruption there.
Yeah, but
we'll call it a power interruption.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So that concludes number 3 of compilations. So champ out,
Dizzy out, but don't forget to leave us any kind of feedback. We love it. We want to hear from our loyal viewers like Richard White.
Yes. Yeah.
And my good friend Wisco.
Yeah.
Gunnar Wiskoff.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Have a great day.